Welcome on into WFRV Plus Sports Night. The Packers on a 4-game win streak. Hey everyone, Cameron is there with you, riding solo per usual on this Wednesday. And of course, Wednesday we get a lot of new news because we don't get to see the Packers practice on Monday. They don't go through an official practice on Monday. And then on Tuesday, they're off. And Wednesday, they're back at practice. So we see them in stretch and in the outside portion as well. And we finally get that injury report that, of course, everyone is very much fiending for. And hey, everyone practiced except one name. And a bit concerning, Josh Jacobs did not practice with a knee injury, was off to the side doing some core exercises and some rehabbing. Saw some reports out there that, the expectation is he'll be back practicing tomorrow, but that is something to monitor because this team definitely needs Josh Jacobs. You think of during this 4-game win streak, they've rushed over 100 yards, and I'm pretty sure each of the last 4 games, and the running game has really set up Jordan Love's ability to pass the football. Practice today, we found out something that I didn't know. We get some insider information and covering the team, you're around the team enough where you kind of figure things out. But I did not see this one coming. We got a winter warning game in Denver. It'll be about 50, 60 degrees, but the Packers rocking their white helmets, the white uniforms. That'll be nice. There's Keyshawn Nixon, who made a similar catch to that to ice the game against the Bears. Christian Watson, of course, a mainstay, 16 catches over his last 4 games, actually is tied for the lead in touchdowns in the NFL by any receiver since week 11. Matt LaFleur talking with Rich Bisaccia. It's good to see Nate Hobbs back in the fold. He was once again limited. Other guys in limited fashion. Matthew Golden once again. Now, luckily, Savion Williams, he returned, of course, dealing with that foot injury, as well as Lucas Van Ness, who got hurt in week 6 against the Bengals, and I probably should have put him on IR, but they didn't understand or didn't realize, I would say, that the severity of, there he is, the severity of his foot injury that he suffered on that sack in the third quarter of the Bengals game. So don't put him on IR, and then you play him for a few snaps in week 11. He can't go the rest of the game, and he's been out the last few games. So the hope is that Van Ness can go on Sunday. I think that's what the Packers would want, especially because that D-line has been shuffled so much. They did bring in Quinton Bohanna, the D-lineman who was on the Seahawks practice squad, and Jordan Riley, who was on the Giants practice squad. But to have an extra guy like that, like Van Ness. Also, don't forget, and of course you see Micah Parsons, who continues to make history of his own. Brenton Cox Jr. has been on injured reserve for a good while now for the green and gold. You'll see him in a second. He was right next to Van Ness, and it's a guy that really got off to a good start. I remember a couple years ago when I was first covering this team, Cox was a mainstay, or at least a guy you'd see a lot in training camp, but he was more so a healthy scratch earlier on in the season, would get that experience there. You see Bohanna, the newest member of the green and gold. But Brenton Cox had a really good start to the year on limited snaps, and if him and Van Ness can come back, you're talking about a pass rush that is already so lethal, but maybe even more so, because when the defense plays well, then the offense benefits, and a guy like Jordan Love can continue to play at the standard in which he's playing at, which is just ridiculous. 7 touchdowns in his last 2 games, and it's good news that he has a good batch of his wide receivers back with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson in the fold. You see Savion Williams right behind Jaden Reed dealing with that foot injury, but he was back after missing the last few games, more so in a limited fashion. But you think of the concussion, it wasn't just the foot injury, it was the concussion that he was dealing with. And to have a guy like Williams, who made that massive catch in New York, back in the fold is great news for the green and gold, or in this case, the white and green. See that running back room? There's Chris Brooks. You saw Emmanuel Wilson, Pierre Strong, Marshawn Lloyd in the fold, but of course, no Josh Jacobs off to the side after dealing with a knee injury. So again, that's something to monitor going into tomorrow. But seeing guys like Savion Williams and Lucas Van Ness back, and you're hoping that Rashawn Gary continues to make some sort of impact, even though it hasn't been in the statistic category. I feel like you're kind of waiting for Rashawn Gary and the rest of the DNs to help out Micah Parsons. And that win over the Bears, Parsons played 14 more snaps than anyone on the defensive line. Is that sustainable? Yes, because he's Micah Parsons, but you'd like for other D linemen to step up, especially in the absence of Devontae Wyatt. that DB room, I think in the early going of the season, you thought about the many shortcomings and, hey, that might be the weak link of that Packers defense, but they've been really, really good with Keyshawn and Carrington Valentine. And also shout out the tight end room, Luke Musgrave, John Fitzpatrick, Josh Wiley, 3 guys that all caught at least a pass in that win over the Bears and really making up for the absence of Tucker Kraft. I feel like you haven't really even felt that impact. Obviously, you're going to, but you get Jaden Reed back. He had 4 catches in that win over the Bears, and even Savion Williams. I feel like why the Packers have drafted for depth at that skill position is for this moment, right? To say we have all these weapons at our disposal, and that goes to show in not just the passing game, but the rushing game too with Emmanuel Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd. So today's practice was all about health, and it feels like the Packers are, knock on wood, of course, because this hasn't been the case recently, they're trending toward the right direction in terms of health, and that's when the Packers are at their best. And I think a lot of us want to see Matthew Golden play more. I think he only played 5 snaps in that win over the Bears, obviously with the heightened role of Christian Watson and company. So a little synopsis from practice. And when we come back on WFRV Plus Sports Night, we chatted with Matt LaFleur before practice, a little reverse order going on, and chatted about this Denver team that, my goodness, you talk about a defense that is as good as any in the NFL. That's next on the show. And we're back, WFRV Plus Sports Night. Let's hear from the head man himself, Matt LaFleur, who 4 weeks ago after that loss to the Eagles, the back-to-back to Carolina and Philadelphia, many were questioning his job security, and now he's won 4 straight. And I say he because, my goodness, has Matt LaFleur played a huge role, not just in that win over the Vikings in which the blueprint was laid out. Let's run, and allow our defense, they take the air out of the ball, allow our defense to be the mediators of that matchup. But in that game against the Lions, he Dan Campbell, and went for it, knew the aggressive approach was what he had to take, and he took advantage of that. Look at this. Might be wondering what that is. It's the IFB. So if you're ever wondering how a broadcaster hears the people in their production studio, you put this in your ear, and you got a voice in your ear telling you how much time you got left. So I just noticed that. And not just, again, mention the Vikings, the Lions, but in that Bears game as well, just the way he was able to get his skill players in the position to make plays and divvy out the responsibility. I think the Packers ran 52 total plays. I'm fairly sure that one of them was a sack. The other was the kneel down by Jordan Love. And the other 50 were even 25 pass, 25 rush. And on that final drive, Josh Jacobs accumulated 42 of the 65 total yards in that 8-play drive on 5 runs, even though he wasn't even the benefactor of the system that LaFleur was trying to run early on, which was Jordan Love, drop back, give him time, O-line, do your thing, launch it deep down the field. So I feel like you got to give Matt LaFleur a lot of credit for this 4-game win streak. And here's the head man talking with the media ahead of Packers Broncos on Sunday.
On Monday, what's the starting plan in trying to solve that through?
It's a hell of a question. I think everybody's trying to figure that out right now. They do a great job. Vance does a hell of a job putting his guys in position, and they're just not really a weak link out there. When you look at their front, their backers, their back end, they've got players across the board. I mean, the sack numbers are pretty crazy. Their run defense is pretty crazy. So you couple that, then you got a legitimate shutdown corner. I think the safeties are excellent. McMillan does a great job. Moss does a great job. So they got a lot of great players, and they put them in great position, and they go out there and they play. I think there's a lot of similarities when I look at our defense in regards to the style of play, how hard they play, how hard they finish and tackle, and so it's going to be a great test for us.
Did you see some things during that joint practice session last year in Denver?
I did. They kind of put it on us pretty good. And it was, it was a new, or I shouldn't say new, but were they all new there then last year? Or Vance? No. But I didn't know a ton about that defense at the time, and yeah, they were legit.
Why has Bo Nix helped win games when a lot of young quarterbacks struggle?
Well, I think it's a byproduct of just the collective. I think he's an excellent quarterback, and obviously, he does a hell of a job in those 2-minute situations. And they've had quite a few comeback victories. I think 9 of the 11 games they've come back in the fourth quarter, and so I think that obviously, deservingly so, he gets a ton of credit for that. But I also think that just when you combine that with the rest of the guys that he has on his offense. Obviously, Sean does a hell of a job calling plays. He has for a really long time. And then the defense and special teams. I mean, it's just a really good football team.
Is there anything you can do to acclimate to the altitude there?
We had our performance staff talk to our players today, and there are certain things that you can do, but ultimately, it is a circumstance, and you got to try to best prepare your body to go out there and handle the elements.
Jordan's completion rate compared to the last few years is up. The turnovers are down. Is that growth, development, just third years of starters, or something within his game this season that you see is different?
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely think that. I think the consistency at which he's gone out there and performed just keeps getting better the more he plays, and certainly the comfort with his surrounding support cast, I think, is ever growing the more we get to go out there and practice. And it's been nice to get some pieces back, I think, later in this year, and so hopefully we can continue to build and get even better.
What makes an offense good against the blitz?
It just depends. I mean, situationally, I think having a good plan, number one, for our guys, but also, you got to be able to react. And I think that's what you saw, just that you've seen a little bit. Just thinking about this past game is, when teams are going to dial up, whether it's a zero blitz or whether it's a fire zone, whatever it may be, how do you react to that? And I think, fortunately for us, our quarterback has responded in the right way.
How much of it is on, receivers and O-line to do their part against that?
Oh, it takes everybody. I mean, you're not going to beat pressure without everybody doing their job. It always starts up front, making sure that you're on the right people. Then you got to make the blocks, which isn't always the easiest. Then the receivers got to sometimes beat man coverage, sometimes just be in the right spot in the right time within the timing of the play. Backs have done a great job for us in protection throughout the course of the season, and we even utilize our tight ends in some of those protection schemes as well. So it is about the collective, everybody doing their 111th.
Hey, Matt, in Detroit, you were pretty aggressive with the fourth downs, and obviously that worked out really well for you. At the end of the half last week, it seemed like you let the game come to you more, didn't use your timeouts right out of the 2-minute warning, and that worked out pretty well for you. How do you gauge when it's time to be aggressive and when it's time to maybe pull back a little bit more?
I think it's all the flow of the game. I think a lot of that will come into play. I think generally speaking, we want to be aggressive. I know that doesn't always come to fruition, again, based on the flow of the game, but typically that's how we like to operate.
So in the term of the flow of the game at the end of the half, where you're starting the third quarter with the ball last week, are you just, no matter what, the Bears are not touching it here again, even if you got to settle for the 3, you want to not give that extra possession?
Well, we actually did give them the extra possession because we scored too quick. But so they got the extra possession there at the end of the half. Is that what you're referring to?
I mean, you'll take the 7 and give them 30 seconds, I'm sure. But is that in your mind as far as, okay?
It is, and sometimes it's hurt us, to be honest with you, because you're always thinking, I don't want to kick off, and I don't want to put our defense back out there. But that was a situation. Every game's a little bit different, but we actually ran the same play back to back, just a little bit differently. We saw that they dropped Christian Watson, and then the next play, dialed it up again, and Bo was running free. So, but I would say every game's a little bit different in regards to how you're going to attack and, just the flow of the game.
What is it about the flow of the game? Like, what are you looking for specifically?
Well, I would just say, just how is your defense doing? Who are you playing? How is their quarterback doing? How are you holding up in pass protection? There's just a lot of elements, a lot of factors, I think, that you're constantly weighing. What is the score of the game? Who's getting the ball at halftime? Or out, to start the second half. So I think there's a lot of factors, a lot of variables that go into just some of the thought process, each and every week.
You've mentioned after a few games the number of possessions that you've had on offense. You're toward the bottom of the league as far as total possessions. Is that partially by design on your end?
Not necessarily. No, it's just, I try not to get too hung up on that. In regards to offensively, you're doing whatever you can do to try to score points. Defensively, you're doing whatever you can do to try to stop the opponent from scoring points. I think it's a little bit of a byproduct of kind of how teams have been playing us, quite frankly, in terms of just the number of rushes. Every time that after a play, that clock's moving. Time is ticking away, and you're going to have less possessions. And then conversely, if you're having long drives on the offensive side, it's going to limit the number of possessions. So, but it just is. It's been kind of a weird year in that regard. It seems like there's like 4 possessions a half, and you just got to try to maximize them.
So it's maybe more so opponents are trying to quote unquote take the air out of the ball to limit.
Well, I don't know necessarily if it's that. I think that's just we've defended a ton of runs, and I think that's kind of a byproduct of our pass rush. And so they feel like that's the best way to attack us.
Matt, there's a lot of coaches the last couple of years have talked about, emphasize the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. Do you buy into that, or you talk about that with your players?
No, I think it's more how do we manage it from a coaching perspective, more so than I just want our players to focus on. Obviously, you got to know situational football and what we're trying to get done in each situation, but I really want them to focus on the task at hand and just play the play to the best of your ability. And certainly in those critical moments, we talk about it every week. We show stuff from around the league when teams, it shows up every week. There's positive, and then there's some really bad stuff, and you try to stay off that tape because every team in the league does this, or most teams, I would say. And you always want to stay off the bad tape, but sometimes you find yourself there, unfortunately. But so you're constantly talking about all the situational stuff. But for us, I would say more so, it's just how are we managing it from a coaching perspective.
I know you guys can't control your schedule at the beginning of the year. Obviously, it's what it is. But
Can't control the schedule ever.
more so that how the teams are going to do and everything. Is there something to being battle tested in the fact that you face Chicago and then you face the top team in the AFC? And do you like that, knowing that?
Yeah, it's what a great challenge. What a great challenge, but also I think there's there's great opportunity that goes with that. So it is what it is. We knew going into this year, like if just looking at it, and there's always going to be surprises each and every year, but I would say just our division alone, you knew it was going to be a grind, and you got to find a way to get through it, and hopefully just continue to focus on the process and getting a little bit better each and every day, and just try to hone in at one game at a time.
And so far, that's exactly what the Packers are doing. They're not just 9-3-1 atop the NFC North, the number 2 seed in the NFC Conference, also 4-0 in the division. And remember that final game against Minnesota, no game time has been announced for that one at the beginning of January. But without Minnesota's playing outside of that last game that they just had against the Commanders, the 31-0 rout, that is a extremely winnable game. And the Bears, they just took them down. So now you got to do it in Chicago. But talking about a team that was 1-5 in the division last year, who don't want to say easily, but is en route to being 6-0 in the division and making that division not look as hard as it obviously is. Okay, we're going to take a break on WFRV Plus Sports Night. We'll come back. We hear from QB1, Jordan Love, ahead of Packers Broncos on Sunday. Let's wrap things up here on WFRV Plus Sports Night. Cameron is here with you. Before we hear from Jordan Love, quarterback one, bit of an update to give you. Yes, the Packers wearing the winter warning, the all-white jerseys in that Broncos game. But because of the TBD or TBA ties to the final 3 games of the regular season, dependent on how teams had been doing throughout the first 15 weeks of the year, the NFL kept those game time slots very much in flux, where it could go to anyone. And yes, it was announced that Chicago game is the late game on Saturday. And now we know at Lambeau Field, the home regular season finale against the Baltimore Ravens is also a Saturday game. So instead of making it a longer week where you go Saturday to Sunday, it's just a normal week, but it's Saturday to Saturday. And it is the night game. That's a 7 Central start on, I think it's NBC and Peacock. And again, one of those games where it could be massive and the implications could be huge based off what the Ravens do in the AFC North and then obviously what the Packers are currently doing in the NFC North. So a lot of prime time, a lot of big time games coming up for the green and gold. So it does not, it's not much of a surprise that what their total is now up to 6 primetime games. I think through the first 16, their Minnesota game will not be prime time, but you have that Chicago's a Saturday night, Baltimore's a Saturday night. The Commanders game was a Thursday night game in week 2. Dallas was a Sunday night football game. The Steelers was a Sunday night football game, and the Eagles was a Monday night football game. And then Detroit was Thanksgiving, make that 7. Pardon my, well, I would still consider that prime time. You need a prime time slot, but Thanksgiving, I'd probably say more so 6 than 7. But that's pretty much half their games have been the sole time slot like that. You watch the Packers, that's the game that's on. So again, not much of a surprise. The green and gold right now 9-3-1 on the season, largely because of Jordan Love and his ability to turn things around when Toyota-thon gets underway. Here's Jay Love on the team's success so far and what he's most looking forward to in the Mile High.
So when you're 44, Jordan, can you see yourself coming out of retirement to go quarterback a team?
Man, never say never, but I don't know. That's good for him.
What's the challenge this week?
Yeah, I think obviously they're a very good defense. Probably one of the best defenses we've seen all year, and the numbers are all kind of back that. But yeah, I think obviously the pass rush they have, the sacks they've been able to generate, and you look at the defense all across the board. I think they got really good players and a really good scheme. So it'll be a good test for us to be able to go out there and see what we can do as offense.
Is there anything you could take from that matchup against the Browns and their pass rush, knowing that you're going to face probably one of the best pass rushes in the NFL this Sunday?
Yeah, I think anytime you got going against elite pass rushers and a good all-around rush it's all about playing on time as a quarterback. Obviously trying to get the ball out as quickly as possible, not trying to hold on to it sometimes, and then really just knowing where your checkdowns are if you do feel some pressure and things like that. But yeah, you just got to go out there, find ways to execute, and if the pocket breaks down at times, try and find ways to escape. But really just know where their good pass rushers are at all times. We'll be on silent count, so that always plays another element of them trying to time the cadence up and things like that. So yeah, it'll just be a good test.
From the outside, it kind of feels a little bit like 2023 with this offense. We guys struggled early and it got really hot down the stretch. Does it feel like that at all internally?
I'd say it's different. I think, like you mentioned, I do feel like we're in a really good place right now. And past couple weeks, we've been doing some pretty cool things on offense and, putting up a good amount of points. But, as we always say, I still think there's more out there for us. And kind of like you mentioned, the 23 season, yeah, we started off slow and I think started finding things that worked for us and getting that groove. But yeah, I think right now we're getting some guys back healthy, which has been huge for us. And yeah, I think we're just playing at a high level right now. So something we just got to keep going and keep stacking. But I'd say it feels a little bit different. But I think everybody's got a lot of confidence in what we're doing right now.
What is it about Matt that when
you guys do find yourself in maybe a little bit of a rut midway through a season, he's able to help you guys as an offense pull yourself out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all just plays a part in his play calling ability. His ability to understand kind of what we're doing well and just kind of the self-scout we do. And just, like I said, figure out what we're doing well, figure out what we're not doing as well, and kind of pivot on that and just keep doing those things and keep finding ways just to keep getting the playmakers and guys who are going out there and making plays, keep getting them the ball. And so I think he does a good job at that. But, I think we just got such a deep playbook where you can find different ways to get guys involved. And like I said, if plays aren't working, he's good at finding ways to adjust, and especially in game. If we go into it with a plan, a certain plan going into the game, and they come out maybe different defense that we weren't anticipating, we're able to make some pretty good in-game adjustments to get back and put ourselves in a good position.
Jordan, why do you think you're hitting on some more of the down the field throws? And I'm not just talking about like the goal balls, but just those medium over the field, 15, 20, 30-yard air shots. Why do you think you're hitting on more of those?
I think it's just, the trust we got in me and the receivers, and guys are winning on their routes and getting open and making plays. And, I think our relationship, everybody just, knowing where we're going to be, having that timing down. And obviously we've had a lot of guys who've been in this offense for a while, and just the trust to know where guys are going to be at, how they're running certain routes, I think is all there. It all plays a part in that. But, I think, I always try and do a good job of just making sure I give guys a chance, and guys are making plays on, if it's a 50-50 ball, if it's, wherever the ball might be. And I think a big part of it is just the receivers winning on routes.
Do you feel like you've gotten more accurate? Because your off-target percentage is much, much lower than it has been in the past.
Definitely. Definitely it's something, I've worked on. And like I said, I think just the more reps you get, understanding where you need to put certain balls on certain routes, and the type of coverage you're seeing, just knowing where to go with it and feeling comfortable at the timing and the trust of the receivers. I think all that plays a part in that. So I definitely feel comfortable right now doing everything. And, that's something that I just try and be as accurate as possible, be the best QB I can be on every play.
Jordan, I know Benito's having a big year, but they've got like a whole bunch of guys that have, multiple sacks throughout the course of the year. How much harder does that make it when they have so many guys who have contributed to that big sack number?
Yeah, I mentioned before, but I think they have a really solid group all around. It's not just one guy that you can finger point out, but all around that defense, and especially the D-line, you look at it, they got playmakers and guys who are making plays and winning their one-on-one matchups. So, it's a little bit different than, maybe a team that only has one solid edge rusher that you're trying to make sure you get chips and lock down that side. But, you kind of got 5 guys who've all won at different times versus different teams. So, we just got to do a good job up front. I got a lot of confidence in our line. They've been doing a great job. And I think even they've been getting better and better as the season's gone on in pass pro. So, like I said, it'll be a good test.
Generally speaking,
The Broncos, 15 sacks in the last 4 games, so it'll definitely be a good test. That'll do it for WFRV Plus Sports Night. We will see you tomorrow and give you an update on Josh Jacobs, who again didn't practice today with the knee injury. See you then.